Hello and welcome back to the Thought Leader Career Podcast. I'm Sam Bylett. Today, I'm joined by Sue Jagan, Associate Director and Executive Recruiter at MeeDerby's. Sue, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Great to have you here. So could you give us a quick kind of intro to what MeeDerby does and what your role as Associate Director involves day to day?
Definitely. Derby is a leading executive search firm dedicated exclusively to the staffing and workforce solutions industry. We've been placing leaders from C-level to mid-management in staffing firms for nearly 40 years. As an associate director, I am a player coach. I lead a small team and work a full desk managing both candidates and clients.
Amazing. And what drew you into the staffing and world? Was there a moment you just knew it was your space?
So it's kind of interesting. I have a story about how I got into the industry way back in the day when I was a little girl. My mom actually would go out on temp assignments. And so from like age 8, I knew what temping was. And so it was kind of like always in the back of my mind on how I could get my first job. So that was actually my first stop after I graduated college, was go to a local staffing firm. And I ended up going temp to hire through that company. And then a few years later, when I was between jobs in the DC Metro, when I had first landed here, I did it again. I went to a staffing company and then I was recruited for an internal position.
Well, so you didn't fall into it as 99% of the people I speak with.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. You're actually the second person in a week that's actually not said they fell into it. So that's interesting. There is a few of you out there.
Yeah. we're the ones that, we love the industry, stick with it. And, it's served me well over the last almost 20 years.
Amazing. And yeah, Derby's been around for years, said nearly 40 years. That's so rare. What do you think has kept the firm so relevant for all the shifts in the industry?
Yeah. So I think, in talking with Rob and me, our founder and CEO, we really have had a deep commitment to the staffing and workforce solutions industry, creating and fostering a community both inside of MeeDerby and externally in the industry. But, ultimately, above all else, service is the most important thing to us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, speaking of that, I saw that the US staffing industry brought in nearly 212 billion in revenue in 2023. Are you seeing that kind of growth reflection in your client conversations, or are there areas where things are maybe slowing down?
So, I think that in some sectors like life sciences and healthcare, there's still growth, but it's niche within those sectors. And while a lot of our other clients are still navigating tight margins and slowdowns, the growth is also bringing strong competition. Clients really need to differentiate faster and build strong internal teams.
Yeah, makes sense. And what hiring challenges are your clients actually coming with you most oftenly right now?
So, I would say that it's still very push and pull. Clients will ask us to work on a role and then, there's kind of less communication, for a week or two at a time. And so I think that that's a challenge that we're experiencing in managing our relationships. But also I think a big challenge that we're dealing with is that the hiring process, it gets stretched out. And if there's not a really strong focus on how long a candidate is in play and how many interviews a candidate is being asked to go through, a candidate will kind of get tired of that process and continue to look at other roles. And, we have lost a couple of candidates because of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we're halfway through the year now. What should staffing leaders start preparing for the second half of the year going into 2026?
So it's probably not going to surprise you when I say this, but, huge thought focus on technology, automating where it makes sense to drive productivity, workforce flexibility, remote hybrid is here to stay. As we know, so many companies have put a big focus on having employees come back to work. We know that candidates want to be in a situation where they have that flexibility. And the reality is, Sam, burnout is real, especially in sales and recruiting. The firms that focus on adaptability and purpose-driven cultures, those are the ones that come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you there. The market is obviously really competitive. especially in leadership roles. How do you help your candidates stand out in the crowd?
So, I think that helping leadership candidates and candidates in general really focus on their personal brand. So, not just a resume, not just a bio, but how are they telling their story? How we prepare them for interviews. Obviously, not telling them exactly what to say, but giving them insight into what the company culture looks like, what they can contribute from a values and leadership perspective, being able to really show emotional intelligence, particularly for those senior roles. I think those are the things that we can really help, our candidates stand out for leadership opportunities.
Yeah, sure. And there was always a lot of talk about talent shortages in staffing. And do you think there is a real shortage, or are companies just using maybe outdated strategies?
I really think it's a bit of both. There is a real talent gap in specialized skill sets, but a lot of firms are using outdated hiring practices, long processes, vague job descriptions, lack of clarity on compensation. I think that's a big one, Sam. The companies that are modernizing their approach are definitely seeing better results.
Yeah, sure. And with headhunting, is there much going on in the staffing space? Was it more active than people think?
I think it's still very much a headhunting business. I think it's a phrase that has had a stigma associated with it. And in fact, I think that that's where a true recruiter can show their talent. When you can engage with a candidate and have a conversation without putting pressure on what you have, like really understanding what are they looking for? What is their passion and why would they consider making a change? I think that's where the art of our business really comes into focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say was one of the most biggest mistakes you see staffing firms make when they're trying to attract top level people?
I really think it is not clearly communicating what a company culture is, what their culture is, and the values within that organization. Candidates want to know, they want to know who they're going to work for. They want to know what it's going to look like when they get there. How are they being supported and whether the leadership aligns with their principles, and lack of clarity in this space, it leads to disinterest. And also, even worse, you get that person in there and then they turn over.
Yeah, sure. And employee branding is so important now, especially in staffing. What makes a firm stand out, and what do most companies tend to miss?
I think that, a strong employer brand in the staffing industry is one that is transparent, that is authentic and candidate centered. It is one where the company's mission, culture, and how they care for their employees really stands out. What's often missing is that clear employee value proposition. What do you offer that others don't? How do you set yourself apart from other companies? And why would somebody really want to come to work there? I think that tends to lack in the conversations that candidates have with clients. And we really try to put an emphasis on that when we're taking in a new opportunity, because we know that our candidates are going to ask that.
Yeah, yeah, so important these days, without a
Yeah,
doubt. Especially
totally.
your brand is really important. Are staffing companies themselves finding it hard to recruit good recruiters?
Yes, I think that that is a challenge. I think
Mm,
that there is a lot of talk, a lot of chatter out there right now with regards to AI and replacing recruiters with technology. And the reality is, for what we see from our clients, they still need a live recruiter. The AI is a support mechanism. And so, yes, there is still a focus, although the demand is not tremendously high right now for recruiting roles that we're seeing. There is still a strong focus on bringing in recruiting talent.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And if a candidate isn't landing interviews, what's the first thing you look at? Is it their resume? Is it networking? Maybe positioning?
So, I think that it's a combination of things. When we're interviewing candidates, a lot of times a candidate will go through multiple interviews here at MeeDerby. So if I'm the first point of contact, if through my line of questioning, I'm sensing that the candidate is not able to speak to their production, and there's also like a tone of lack of confidence, like not motivated, not feeling like they're actually going to get out and find that opportunity, I'm going to really inject a level of confidence and positivity into the conversation, because you do have to stand out and you do have to feel like you're somebody the client is going to want, but you also have to be able to quickly speak to what your deliverables are. And a lot of candidates aren't able to quickly speak to, I sold X amount of revenue in this period of time. These were the goals that I had. And, getting to the core of it, we're really working to attack those attributes, if you will, with a candidate before we actually get them out in front of the client.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
LinkedIn as well. That's got to be an important thing to have now, isn't it? As well as your resume,
It,
your LinkedIn profile is really important, just as a resume now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, it's making sure that what you have on LinkedIn is consistent with what you're sharing with whomever it is that you're dealing with, your recruiting partner, your direct contact, the hiring manager that you're interviewing with. If there are inconsistencies on the resume and what's on LinkedIn, that's going to kind of bubble up questions that might not necessarily need to be there.
Yeah, I think with that, yeah, it can help you a lot, LinkedIn, and also probably could hinder you as well if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And are companies being upfront enough about comp packages, and how do you help them navigate those conversations?
Yeah, so this is a good one. Not always. Compensation transparency is still a pain point. When clients are vague or hesitant to share salary bands, it creates distrust and slows down the process. Candidates today expect honesty and alignment early. When we're interviewing candidates, we're drilling down, obviously, with respect to the laws that are in place and not being able to ask in certain states what their compensation has been. We can certainly ask them where they want to be in their next opportunity, and then drilling down on where they want to be from an on target earnings perspective. But if we don't have the details from the client on what they pay in terms of commission percentages and where they think realistically first year, second year, third year is going to look like with bonuses or whatever upside is available, that's going to create challenges, particularly in getting to the final stages where we're hoping that we can get an acceptance.
Yeah, interesting. And what do you think will be the biggest trends to shape recruitment over the next few years? I'm guessing AI is probably going to be the big one.
Yeah, I think, for candidates being able to, one, like I just mentioned, speak to results quickly and how those contributions impacted your success in the current role and what they can bring to the table going forward. I think, there's no perfect candidate. And so I think considering candidates that are maybe looking for their next step in their career, and then as an employer offering them coaching or training upon joining the organization, I think that's a really big one. And then, of course, like you said, AI. And, how do you utilize that technology, particularly in recruiting? How can it impact that top of the funnel? And then ultimately just getting more qualified candidates to the recruiter's desk.
Yeah. Yeah, AI is a really interesting one, isn't it, in recruitment?
It is.
It really is. See how far it can go, and what it's going to change the industry over the next couple of years. We're all
Hmm.
we're all waiting to see,
Yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure.
And finally, what's next for you and the team at MeeDerby? Any exciting plans in the pipeline?
Yeah, so it's always exciting over here at MeeDerby. We're always doing something new, continuing to evangelize the business. We are continuing to get out there and speak to the masses. I recently was in Ohio at the Ohio Staffing and Search Association annual conference, speaking on creating a culture of accountability. Here at Mead, we're continuing to invest in technology and expanding our client services. A few years back, we launched a division that caters specifically to sales and recruiters, folks that are more in that 3 to 5 year range of their staffing career. And then also a huge emphasis right now for us is skill marketing, identifying candidates that maybe we don't have the right opportunity for, putting those candidates in front of clients that proactively may be looking. They haven't necessarily called us to say, we're going to be doing some hiring, but really continuing to create opportunities for our candidates by way of skill marketing.
Yeah. Exciting stuff. For our audience, and where can they find out a bit more about me and connect with yourself?
Yeah, for sure. You can always reach out to me via email, which is sue@MeeDerby.com. You can go to our website, which is MeeDerby.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. We have a great LinkedIn page. We're constantly pushing out content relevant to both candidates and clients. And so, yeah, happy to connect in any of those forms. Certainly, my LinkedIn page is updated, and I look forward to connecting. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Sam.
Thanks, Sue. It's been a great
Yeah,
conversation. Really enjoyed it.
yeah, me too.
Take care. Thank you.